Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion. Learn the truth behind the alcohol myths and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Well, hey everyone, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast. Welcome to the show. I'm really glad you're here. So today I want to share with you that I just celebrated 7 years since I attended my coaching certification class. Yes, it was July 19th of 2019. And what an incredible journey it's been since then. I have been thinking about the trajectory of my coaching career and what changed in that time of those 7 years. And gosh, just so much has been coming up. So I'd love to just share with you a little bit today about the mistakes I made, the things I learned along the way, the things that went really well, and kind of, where I've been doing my coaching and where I've been putting my attention lately. So, if you're ready to hear a little bit more of what's been going on with me and my reflection on these 7 years, let's get started. So, it's really interesting because 7 years ago, here's where I was at. I had started a new job at a local high school. So I had worked for several years, about, 12, 13 years as a school support staff. So I worked at the elementary school, the kindergarten, and an alternative high school, and I finally made the move to the local high school. So I had just started a new job, and I had been waiting for this coaching certification weekend to come up. So the timing was really tight. I was going to be starting the new job, and then I think I was going to be gone for a few days to Colorado. And I had signed up in April to join Annie Grace's first cohort of coaches for This Naked Mind Institute. There was really no such thing. I was the first class, and when I got to Colorado, it was with so much excitement and a little bit of fear. I had, if you remember my story at all, I had stopped drinking a few years before, almost 4 years before. So I had been alcohol free and I had gone to nutrition school. And so I had been working part time, very part time, as a health coach. I was teaching a really wonderful program called Restart that was helping people with eliminating some of the most problematic foods. We were doing some group coaching together. I was having a lot of fun as a health coach, but I wasn't having much financial success. So it was sort of a hard sell to my husband that I was going to invest in another coaching program because as a nutritionist, I hadn't really earned back the investment yet. But with a little bit of luck and a little bit of grit, we got it together. And gosh, thank goodness he decided to take a chance on me. And my mom was a big part of this as well. And so I was ready to go to Colorado, and we had been meeting as a group. I remember when we got the dates that we were going to meet in our cohort in July in Colorado. I wanted to meet the other people, and it wasn't like I was necessarily like the best tech person and I was going to create this group where we could all connect. But I thought, well, some of us are going to be flying in early. Some of us might want a roommate. Some of us might want to share a car ride from the airport, and Uber. And so I set up like a janky Facebook group and invited as many people as I could get names to. I think I asked This Naked Mind to please gather the names and we would connect. And so it began. So we were kind of making some arrangements, and because I was doing this on the cheap because I was trying to justify the cost. So I actually, showed up in Colorado with a roommate who was coming all the way from Scotland. And so I was excited, and we met at the airport. We took a car in together, and we were staying at a hotel that was walking distance to the place where the event was taking place, and it was in a church basement, but not just an average church basement. It was actually a really nice the Adventure Church, maybe in Lakewood, Colorado. I think it was Annie's home church at the time. And so here I showed up, just having a few names of people that I had connected with on Facebook, and knowing that I would be one of the few people that had had some coaching experience, and also one of the people who was had more longevity when it came to years alcohol free. So we spent, I think it was 2.5 days together, so a long weekend as we started the certification process. So when I say July 19th is my anniversary, I actually didn't get certified for about 5 or 6 weeks later because we had to learn the material, practice the material, submit our practice, and then be certified. So that did take a little while, but I love to think of July 19th because it's where that adventure really started for me. I met some incredible people there, mostly women that I've stayed in touch with, but I love to look back at the women I met in that Colorado room, and not all of them are still coaches, but several of them are, and several of them, have remained in my life, and I just think what an incredible gift we were given to make such an impact, because I know that I went on to work for Annie Grace in her program and eventually in the PATH program, and worked with Annie for about 3.5 years while I built my own business and saw my own clients, and so I got to work with hundreds and hundreds of people. I coached in the live alcohol experiment with at that time used to have 2,000 people in a group. And yes, so it was really incredible. And also looking back to see how many lives I got to touch. And then after working with Annie Grace for 3.5 years, I went out on my own for a while. I got to host an alcohol free coaches retreat with the fabulous Carolina Jaskobowska. And I got to really start this podcast and connect with a lot of women. I built a couple of different programs. I worked to help support coaches. One of the cool things I got to do at the end of my career working with Annie Grace and This Naked Mind was I actually got to be part of the This Naked Mind Institute and work with a group of coaches. So be one of their mentors and guides for 9 months through the process of them becoming certified as coaches. It was so cool. And of course, some of them I remain close to this day as well. And so that original group of ladies, we have just such a connection because we were the first coaching class, which was really cool. And so those, 3 days in Colorado were pretty amazing. I recall that we had at some point a question in one of the afternoons, and I was sitting next to a lovely woman named Wendy, and I got to chat with her, and we were doing an exercise, and one of the questions was around, what will success look like for you? I believe. And I said, well, I kind of had my eye on the financial gain because I wanted to prove to my mom and my husband and my family and myself that I could make this actually a financially stable business and not just a jobby, a hobby that cost me money, like my health coaching business. So I was really concerned, like, hence the roommate. And then also, I looked at what success looked like for me and I said, well, if I could help 50 clients in a year. And my lovely partner, Wendy, said, well, how many clients have you helped as an alcohol free coach so far? And I said, zero. And so I was asking a lot to go from zero to 50. But what happened for me was as I certified in that first summer, like I said, several weeks after the training, I then went on to connect with more This Naked Mind clients at a live retreat. I think it was the last one that Annie hosted in September of 2019. I got to see some of the coaches I had met, and we got to show up and meet a whole bunch of clients of Annie's. So members of her programs. I don't know that she had that many programs at the time, but while I was there, I strategically shared that I wanted to be one of the first coaches hired to work in the This Naked Mind programs because I had more experience as a coach than many of the new coaches, and I had been alcohol free for longer than many. And so in November, they actually hired me to work in the live alcohol experiment. And so I started there, and then the following December, a year into it. Now, remember, COVID 2020, people ramping up their drinking, a little bit of time off for me to be, or at least to work from home. So I was growing my own coaching program, and there was a lot happening, of course. But in 2020, December of 2020, Annie Grace opened what would become The Path, and I was chosen to be one of those first coaches. So now I had a gig for a year. And then I was able to add more Path programs to my resume as I coached. I think total, I coached in 7 or 8 of the 1 year Path programs. And then also at one point in the 90-day experiment. I don't think they offer that anymore. But wow, was I lucky to be able to gain so much experience right off the bat of teaching mostly women, but men and women, the tenets of the program that I had learned, and really the basics of becoming alcohol free. And not just the behavior, but everything else that goes along with that. And so, as I worked with Annie Grace for that amount of time, I learned so much. I got to hang out with some amazing coaches. I got to be in the business of coaching on maybe at some point I was coaching 3 Path programs at a time. So that'd be 3 weekly coaching sessions as well as some daily interactions with the groups. So I was getting a lot of experience, and I was having success on the side with my own coaching. So, in the beginning, it's really interesting because what happened with me is kind of the evolution of my own journey. So, remember when I stopped drinking alcohol, was alcohol free for quite a while before I became an alcohol free coach. And so, the idea of putting into action the things that I learned in my own journey was always part of my intention and always part of the way I've coached. I've recognized that, by sheer luck or God's grace, I stumbled upon some things that actually worked. And I teach those things to this very day because there's nothing like experience to show you, hey, when I was in the trenches, this is how I dug my way out. These are the things that I focused on. And it wasn't always pretty and it wasn't always easy, but I had success. And so there was something to build from. I had my own success. And so as I learned more of This Naked Mind approach to coaching, one of the most valuable things I learned was what Annie called HRT, which is hope, relationship, and tactics. And I've always used that in my coaching. So if you think about it, anytime I share with you, my audience of listeners, I always want to offer hope, the possibility that there's more out there to explore. There's a different way. There's another version besides the story you've been telling yourself. So that beautiful place of hope underpins all of my coaching and really has been a huge part of my life in these, well, now it's been over 10 and a half years. But in this past decade, holding out hope for myself and others has been key to how I've created this, life that I don't want to escape from, that I am thriving, not surviving, that I consider far more impactful, beautiful, intentional, and exciting than my life when I was drinking. And so hope is where it all started. And then relationship. It's fascinating to me to consider the relationships that I've built as a coach because I think as a therapist, and I could be wrong, I've never been a therapist, so I don't say this with a black and white statement, but I do believe that professional therapists do kind of create a space between their life and the client, and they don't offer stories from their own life to create that deeper relationship. It's not about what I've done. It's about, tell me about you, and there's principles and framework. But in this life coaching, and certainly in the experience that I've had, because I have a personal story that connects, I will often share the things that worked for me, the struggles that I've had. I've been very open about, the struggles I had early on with anger and anxiety and control, and the fact that my husband and I struggled in our marriage in that first year. And we went to marriage counseling, and the struggles I had, that I was angry when he was still drinking for a couple years after I stopped. So relationship has always been building that relationship has always been a big part of the way that I coach. I know there's other alcohol-free coaches and life coaches who maybe have a different approach, but, you know, I only know how to be me. And so that hope and relationship has been really powerful. And I have definitely crossed the line to where some of my coaching clients have become friends. And typically, our friendship will deepen when the coaching relationship ends. But I do feel close to my clients in a way that is been very effective. So that relationship piece, so helpful. And then the HRT tactic, understanding the tactics that go into practical change. I don't give advice, it's not helpful. But I do want to help people build tools. I do want to help people understand that there are tactics we can use. And it's a really important part of untangling our relationship with alcohol and recognizing, why we used alcohol as the one and only tool in our toolbox. So HRT has been one of the biggest things I took away from my early training with Annie Grace. And I then went on and did other trainings. So I had my health certification and my This Naked Mind life coaching training, or This Naked Mind Institute, I should say properly. I have since also done the affective liminal psychology with Annie Grace as well as an adjunct certification, as well as the addiction of psychology with Dr. Anna Limke through Stanford University. So fun to go back to college. Not really. I did learn a lot in that course, though. It was amazing. And as well as just last fall, I did the trauma informed nervous system regulation school with Jessica McGuire. So, I've continued to learn and grow, and I'm fascinated by the process of continuing to learn. You would not believe how many podcasts I listen to that are related to nervous system regulation, habit formation, untangling our thoughts, emotional regulation, this connection between neuroscience and alcohol use disorder. It's fascinating to me. I think it always will be. And there's so much more to learn. Probably the biggest personal change that I've made in my sort of philosophy of supporting clients is that, Annie Grace has a very unique approach to her alcohol experiment and the path. And it's the way that I was trained. And I appreciate so much of her philosophy. And that philosophy really looks like quit trying to quit. And so when we would work with people in the path, there was always the opportunity for members to choose their own stop date of not drinking, at least in the early days of the path when I worked with Annie. And it makes a lot of sense, right? That too much pressure on just behavior doesn't result in lasting change. But as I worked with clients in those early years, I realized that to work with someone who was still drinking was really challenging. It was very hard to get them to a place where alcohol was completely out of the picture, because the coaching relationship supports starting where the person is at. And so I have since been working with Alcohol Free Lifestyle and James Swanwick and the coaches in that container. And I've had an amazing 2 years learning so much of the neuroscience, supporting clients a little bit differently. And even before I started working with AFL, Alcohol Free Lifestyle, I realized that I wanted to invite clients from a place of cessation. So, meaning abstinence, that in order to work together, y someone would need to come in, uh, not drinking alcohol, because it's very hard to make enough progress in 90 days, which is my typical one-on-one coaching, to to make enough progress in 90 days to get to a point where you have enough time alcohol free. So if you're working with someone for 90 days and they're still drinking off and on before they stop, you lose time. So maybe you only have 2 months to work with them or 1 month to work with them. And there's something really powerful about 90 days with no alcohol, zero alcohol. It gives us enough time to get past the willpower, past the, just the very top layer of tools. We have to really sink in. We have to dig in. We have to show up differently. And so that's been probably the biggest change, is that I now recognize that even someone who's drinking occasionally, it's really, really hard to get them over the finish line. And so when I start with someone and the understanding and the intention is no alcohol, we make so much more progress, so much faster. And that is so key. And that really feels like the place that I want to continue to support people. In Alcohol Free Lifestyle, clients come into a 90-day program and there is no drinking. And it's a group program which builds together. So they support each other in this process of being alcohol free for the 90 days. And what I realized in my own life when I stopped drinking, and I've talked about this before, is that the most important and powerful thing I did was not make more than one decision. I made one decision that I was done drinking. And that changed everything, because all I had to figure out then was how. I didn't have to figure out when and how come and why. I just had to figure out how. And so when I bring people into my coaching, or when I work with clients in groups, the not having to decide if how much I'm going to drink, or I'm going to cut back, or I've really tapered. And I understand the whole harm reduction, but alcohol is a sneaky what. And even one drink a week can derail so much of the progress with setting up new pathways, with setting up new automatic behaviors, with supporting new tool formation, and all of the things that go into it, with repairing all of the systems in our body, from gut health to sleep to emotional regulation, and not even to mention nervous system support. So the biggest change for me has been kind of that progression from meeting people where they were at and supporting them as they reduce their drinking to really working only with clients who are willing to take that 90-day break. And you don't have to decide forever, but to work with me at this point, I ask that members or individuals who come to me are not drinking for 90 days. And boy, have the results with coaching changed from that container. So that's probably the biggest change. And that's just was due to working and getting experience in trying it a couple different ways and understanding and growing more because I had never been through a coaching program. I had never tried it a number of different ways. I didn't join this program and then figure out a little bit and then didn't work. So I tried this one. Remember, I stalked on my own one day. Now, there was a lot leading up to that. As you know, if you've listened to me and more of my podcasts, there was a lot leading up to that. But that made all the difference. And so, inviting people to make one firm decision, and then we take away all the back and forth, the decision to fatigue, and that miserable maybe. So, yeah, just reflecting back on these 7 years and what they've meant and what's changed in my own coaching philosophy. And I think I'm going to make this a two-parter. And so I'll come back in the next podcast or maybe in a couple of podcasts and share a little bit more about, what it has looked like these last 2 years to really move away from a lot of my personal coaching and get to support the amazing members and clients that I work with in the alcohol free lifestyle programs and Project 90, and what that has brought into the creative part of my own journey, as well as supporting members, what I've learned, where I've grown, how I'm incorporating my new training as a trauma informed nervous system support. Um, practitioner, I guess is the way to say it, and what that looks like. So, yeah, just a little trip down memory lane. So great to connect with you today. And, I hope what you'll take away from this is that this is an evolution as you go through it, whether you're a potential alcohol free individual, whether you've been alcohol free for a while and you're also suddenly redefining, what alcohol, the role it plays in your life. Like maybe you used to be someone who was like, yeah, drink, don't drink. It's not a problem for me. However, you may now be saying, I don't really want to be around people that drink, or I don't want to support the alcohol industry. And so, wherever you're growing, that is just cool because as we live longer alcohol free, we will see the way that our life changes and the way this one decision has impacted our growth, the things that we learn. And particularly if you're here as a coach, not just as an individual, but someone who went from drinking to not drinking to now coaching and supporting other members or other individuals who are not drinking. You may have thought that you had the exact coaching method figured out. And maybe like me, some things have shifted. And I just want to honor that. I think it's beautiful. I think it's important. And you can hear episodes here in the Sober Edge podcast. Now that we're close to like 220 episodes, you can hear me talk about the places where I've changed my mind, the things where that I used to say that I thought were black and white, that I have now recognized, there's more to learn. And the humility and curiosity can be a guiding force. So let's come back together again in a couple of weeks or a month, and I'll share a little bit more about what I've been up to these last 2 years. I hope this was fun for you. Thanks for indulging me. Wherever you are, if you would like support in an alcohol free container to work one on one coaching, I don't do as much as I used to because I really work in the alcohol free lifestyle programs. I do have openings to support a couple individuals. So if this type of coaching sounds powerful and important to you, and you could use a guide by your side, reach out. We might just be a fit. All right. Until next time, take care. Mhm. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.